Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you may be tuning in from. Thank you so much for joining. I am joined as always by Jason Buffington, my colleague. And Jason, today is episode 30. That's 30. Exactly. It's been a long time now, a good long run. And today we're actually going to have a guest that we'll bring in here shortly, the great Rick Vanover, who I'm sure everyone knows from multiple different streams and events throughout Veeam's long history now. But Jason, let's tease up today's topic. Today's topic is essentially around backup and security, and does it mix or not, and are they related?
Yeah, does it mix or not? So, if you look in the annals of history of the data protection industry, we've had several companies that tried and talked about how these two really should be one thing. In fact, there was one company, seems like a backup company, bought an antivirus company, and they hung out together for a few years, and then really messy divorce. I forget the details, but I mean, history would tell you, no, these are completely separate things. And any IT pro person who's actually employed in 2020 will tell you, no, actually, kind of, they ought to be talking to each other. So
Yeah, and that history lesson is an interesting one on so many fronts. Yeah, because the security company bought the storage company for many, many billions and later spun it back out for fewer billions. But that escalated a arms race where then CA Technologies or then Computer Associates bought ArcServe and
yep.
IBM said, okay, let's take our Tivoli Systems Management Group and let's take ADSM, rebranded TSM, and move it in there. So there was a whole slurry of activity that took place in the late 90s, I guess it was early 2000s now, if I think back. But that notion, you're right. I mean, does security fit or does it not? Where does backup go into all of this? Even my dog is rolling over just thinking I've heard this story before, and he's only 3. So without further ado, let's bring in the great Rick Vanover, also on our product strategy team. Rick, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great. You caught me, got the dog's attention yet again. I was laughing pretty hard with that one, but no, hashtag 2020, right? We get it.
Hey, 2020, you don't have to apologize for children, pets, doorbells. In fact, I'm pretty sure you don't have to apologize for a darn thing. So, with that in mind, I think we ought to hit the Veeam map here shortly while we simultaneously invite people to post any questions that they may have now for the trio of us. Now that Rick's here, we can get to the hard questions even if they should happen to come in. I see we already do have one. Question from AJ. What is Veeam's strategy for cloud native ecosystem, meaning Veeam just acquired Kasten or K10? When can we expect integration of both of these tools? Rick has no hair because this has actually been happening already. I'll tease that one up to you, Rick.
Well, I think that's the next frontier, Jay. When I look at the future, I mean, we are definitely advancing the platform on premises, cloud, virtual file, application, physical, those things. The engines of our platform are progressing. And then you look at cloud native. In fact, stay tuned for some big news tomorrow. We have our software as a service product had an update last week, and the other Amazon and Azure solutions are progressing. And then when you look at the Kubernetes space with the Veeam acquisition of Kasten, my opinion is truly right place, right technology, right time. And you're going to see that progress into the Veeam platform. So stay tuned. I mean, right now it's a product that has a roadmap with Veeam, and it is a product that is doing very well in all of the Kubernetes native areas. So my personal opinion, Ajay, is we're doing the right thing in regards to cloud native apps.
Yeah, and if I double clicked on that just slightly, ecosystem is at the fabric of everything that Veeam has ever done, right, Jason? I mean, you know this story very well, being involved with the alliance partners, and that ecosystem extends northbound and southbound, meaning whether we're talking about operations and systems management tools, applications, hypervisors, down into infrastructure. And one of the many things that David Hill on Rick's team likes to point out about Kasten is that there's so many similarities from a product perspective, but also from a company perspective, and ecosystem is certainly not lost on that. So I did tease up the map.
Some of the cloud stuff. Oh, sorry, Dave, go ahead.
No. You finish your thought, and then we'll update to the map in a little bit here. But let's make sure we hit this one.
Yeah, I mean, so when you think about like where we evolved from, right? So for many people, Veeam was literally synonymous with VM-based backups, right? And so then we started adding physical, and then we started adding cloud-based workloads. But if you look at the path for how that innovation is, and the Ricketron is actually our bona fide historian for all things Veeam as well. But the short version of that history basically starts with, does the storage layer interact, right? Can we at least, because at least if the stuff is stored the same way, we have the potential to start doing interesting things with it. And then after that, well, then can you start compressing the control plane and start doing instrumentation? And then before long, it starts to become a seamless product. And you can look at like our Amazon product as a poster child for that evolution over time. And each of those, the challenge is in this industry, no two clouds look the same. So the secret sauce for how you back up Amazon looks different than how you back up Office 365, looks different than how you back up Kubernetes, right? And so that secret sauce has to be different. But each time it always starts off with, can we interchange storage? Then can we interchange control plane? And then from there, how do we really get better value in 1 + 1 = 3.7? Right. So that is that natural logic that happens each line along the way. Yeah, my math is a little off, Rick. I get it.
Hey, it's larger than pi, so that's a good thing. So I did allude to a map. Rick actually in the pre-call tried to take over ownership rights of the map. Jason and I double teamed him and took it back. We are the ones that originated the map. So let's hit this map. We have, I think now 10 countries. Multiple states. Let me just do a quick count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I lied. I undershowed us. So 11 for V11. Of course, we're going to try to kick that up higher in a number of U.S. states as well. So thank you for that. Do encourage you, if you watched this later on, feel free to enter what state in the United States or what country you might be from or in city. And country you might be joining us. We have some, I think, is that Senegal?
Senegal on the west coast of North Africa.
Nice.
Yeah.
You can always count on South Africa being in the house. Say hello to my favorite meat eaters down below. Very good. We got Netherlands in there again. They're probably checking to make sure that we're not talking about the announcement early. So
nice. Yeah, exactly. So with that, since we've only just begun to pick on Rick, let's really now put him to work. The notion here I wanted to tease up, Rick, and you've got a great talk track and several slides, but one in particular that talks a bit to the changing threatscape, meaning, cyber or anything to do with security. It is not something that's standing still. It's not dormant. It continues to evolve. It continues to morph. And you've got a great slide about how these threats actually infiltrate.
Yeah, and I think that's a good starting point for the conversation. I want to give a little shout out to my friends in Canada from the Atlantic Security Conference. Got this in 2019 at the event, thinking about those people every day when, missing the travel. But cybersecurity is really something that we take pretty significant. And when you call it a talk track, I call it a side hustle. My specialization here at Veeam is preparing our customers and partners to be resilient against ransomware. And one of the things that I like most, and we'll launch the slide, I think, just now, and where does ransomware come from? And there are 3 main modes of entry, and depending on the different research you have, you'll find that they may come from one or more of these in different levels. But Coveware, the data breach information report, Veeam's own report, we really can track where these threats come in from. And I actually grew up thinking that they all came in from phish, but actually the Coveware report has around 26% of those coming in through bad email. And then remote desktop or otherwise a remote access compromise being the leader there. And if you think about 2020, a lot of organizations had to hurriedly implement a work from home. That really concerns me, right? Do you need it right or do you need it right now? April this year, we needed it right now. How was that managed? And then vulnerabilities. So if you're looking at cybersecurity, especially from a ransomware resiliency standpoint, if you're handling your remote access well, if you're training users and have technology implementing mechanisms to defend against email phish, and you're managing updates like we should, you can really knock out 97% or so of the threatscape for ransomware. So that's a really good starting point. And you'll see these numbers. I've tracked them over time. I think that was the end of 2019's number. But going into 2020, we saw the remote access go up from a breach entry point. So again, different threats behave different ways, but that's a really good way to start, is addressing those three.
Yeah, great point. You know what I really like about that slide, Rick, and Jason, you feel free to jump in here on this conversation too, is that ostensibly those things had nothing to do, or very little, if nothing to do, with backup or even storage. The point is, though, that really security is everyone's responsibility. I like to say performance is a goal that you're never done with. You make incremental gains, but you never say that you claim victory. Jason, I would assert that security in cyber is no different.
Yeah, I think the problem is that as an industry, some of the backup companies over-rotate us. You get a marketing guy in a backup company. He says, well, everyone wants to talk about cyber. We should talk about cyber. And if the only thing that you're doing in cyber is providing a copy to restore from, then it's working exactly like cyber planning would look just like earthquake planning, would look just like fire and flood. It's just not that interesting. Yes, your backup software should be able to restore data. Yay. Right. But that's not really integrating data protection with cybersecurity. And so I think sometimes we have miscombobulated those terms, and we ought to be talking about them authentically as far as where does data protection, backup, snapshots, replication, all those forms, where does that fit within a modern cyber preparedness strategy? And I think that'd be the interesting topic for this.
Yeah, great point. And while we've got you, Jason, we've just been doing some joint activity, actually a fair amount of joint global research around different kinds of trends that we're literally just getting worldwide information coming back to us. Maybe walk us through some of that and, a little bit about how that relates to the topic at hand.
Yeah, one thing that Veeam started doing a couple of years ago is we've got this thing called the Data Protection Trends Report, and on different years we title the final report different things. But we are in the process of we hired an outside contract firm, so they didn't know it was us, reaching out to over 3,000 IT pros and IT leaders across enterprises around the world, 28 countries. I mean, it's an insane number. I think it's the largest single set of data protection data that I'm aware of in the 31 years I've been in the business. And so we're just now seeing some of that data. It's not even all the way called in QA yet, but it's looking really good. We're going to publish it under our banner in January-ish. And we asked questions like, what's changing? What's driving your IT strategy? Where are your major concerns? How did the pandemic affect digital transformation? So we had some questions along the way. One of my favorite questions is when you ask organizations, what does modern look like? Everyone's trying to get better, right? So in your minds, what does modern look like? And we have a slide for that, slide 2 in our prep for today. And we asked organizations, what would you consider to be the defining aspects of a modern or innovative data management or data protection strategy? And then, oh, by the way, pick one, right? Pick all that you like, but then pick one along that way. And they are stack ranked by most important. And I love the fact that it wasn't that many years ago that you'd look at a chart like this and it was has to work with Oracle, must work with Exchange DAG, must work with VMs. Right? I mean, that's kind of how we did our thing 13 years ago, was must work with VMs, and nobody else got that. But this year, take a look at the list. When you look at the top lines that are out there, okay, so must have orchestration, get the humans out of the way, not Skynet style, but, just in general, get the humans out of the way. We had a set of Matrix jokes earlier. DR to the cloud, API based, but all of these are really about better together. It's not a feature. It's an outcome. But the one I love, and we put a little red box around this, the ability to integrate data protection within a comprehensive data security strategy. Again, backup does not replace all of the premeditations, preparedness that Rick was talking about earlier, but having that last line of defense ought to be part of the strategy. Can I get an amen from the rest of the crowd?
I'm doing better. I'll give you a VBK. Yeah.
A VBK is better than an amen? I don't know. So yeah, so that's what the trend is driving towards is get the humans out of the way, leverage the cloud better. I love the fact, in fact, I think it's interesting that integrating tasks with systems management and integrating with cybersecurity are adjacent to each other in that list. What folks are telling us is, let's get out of the backup business, right? Data protection should be intrinsic and foundational within the platform, and it should be integrating with the rest of the parts of our strategic IT initiatives.
Yeah, and I know we had a question that came in talking about what additional things can Veeam do in addition to backup. And so that actually is a good way to tease up this whole segment or this whole live stream, meaning Veeam doesn't purport to be a security company, but we know that data resiliency, data availability has a significant role to play in a security context. Along with those lines, Jason, you're always very quick to point out that the difference between disaster and recovery and migration is actually minute. The difference really is migration is a disaster that you plan for. So if you step back at the highest level, what is a backup solution or a replication solution? It is a data capture, data transfer, data management mechanism. Data management can be defined many ways, but loosely or minimally, you have to be able to keep tabs on where the data is residing and how to get credentialed access to it. So with that as a foundation, capture the data, prepare to move the data, and then prepare to keep track of the data. There are a number of things that you can do. And Rick, as it relates to this context, one of the things that I really like that we came out with at Veeam in version 10 earlier this year was something we call the Data Integration API. And in this context, using something like Meta Defender Cloud is something that one of our vanguards, Ben, I believe, actually trialed and posted about. And talking to people in the field, Veeam has a number of capabilities and ways to interact with antivirus software. But when I talk to people, and I will tell you frankly, when I got hit personally, I used 3 different tools to fully eradicate and scrub. No single solution from a security AV perspective did the job entirely. And that doesn't seem to be a unique statement. When I talk to others, including one of our Veeam SEs, said, yeah, in the field, we knew of someone that had to use 4 different tools to try to get cleansed. And the ability for a solution like Veeam to be able to interact with and have an ecosystem around external capabilities, I think shows part of the value of that. So, with that, before we close on that, Rick, I want to give you kind of a final word on that before we move on.
Well, I think what you said, Dave, is very accurate. And, a lot of times when I talk to IT professionals who talk to security professionals, right, that's the bridge. That's the connective tissue. And it really kind of comes down to the discipline and the background. One of the things showing my age, curator of the Veeam Museum here, yes. One of the things I grew up with was this thing called the CIA triad. Ensuring, and this is the simplest form of cybersecurity, it's ensuring confidentiality, C, integrity, I, and availability, A, of data you care about. And Veeam aligns in the A triad, right? And then same thing with the NIST cybersecurity framework, a little bit more modern, upgraded, timely one, identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, right? So Veeam sits there. So when you look at the data integration API, these are capabilities from Veeam that honestly, you would never expect from a backup product. If you really take the time to get your head around Data Labs, the data integration API, from a security tooling perspective, from a response, from a data analytics perspective. In fact, in the white paper I recently wrote about Veeam ransomware resiliency A to Z, I took the data integration API as a really important mechanism where organizations can basically shorten the time between when ransomware is introduced and when its exploit is noticed, right? So you have the capability here to do, imagine a world, and this is the best part, is this is all available today. Take a backup of something. Okay, let's automatically ensure that it's recoverable. Well, that makes me feel really good. Well, then let's also, in an automated fashion, do a scan for PPI or credit card numbers or social numbers or anything else my business cares about. Well, we can do that. And then let's do another scan with advanced threat analysis, with different tooling, with no exclusions and more aggressive scanning. That's all available today. So when you put and B and C together with Jason's math, you end up with a hex code of H, awesome, right? So, that's the line of thought here, Dave. And whatever framework we align to, we can find ways to do that with Veeam.
Yeah. So I love that example where you talk about using different kinds of tools at different parts in the work stream along the way. I think that's especially interesting when you look at, say, what some of our channel partners and our VCSPs and some of the GSIs are doing, where you're now talking about different organizations. And what I talk to our larger partners about is, look, whatever cruddy antivirus detection software that their subscribers might be running, part of the value add of leveraging the VCSP system would be that you could go ahead and run a different set of detection tools that weren't chosen by that particular subscriber. And so you have different ways of checking on that, which I just think is absolutely brilliant.
Perfect. And, Jason, I think we're getting an update on the map. I think we've got 7 other countries that have just come in, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, nice. Okay, so what do we got? So it's always good when at least one Canadian joins the call, because then the map just glows green on that side. Awesome to see that. Looks like Czech is in the house. India. Spain is in the house. Oh, yeah, very nice. California weighed in. Awesome. UK, Sweden. Is that Ireland?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Ireland's in. And the UK, so both halves there. Emirates, I think I'm seeing them, that little bitty tiny red dot down there. So
yeah.
Awesome.
I think it's green, by the way.
Please keep it. Please keep the countries coming. Turkey in the house, and then the Texas education system is starting to fail me as far as some of the countries in Africa. I will do that remedially later.
Awesome. So, want to switch gears just slightly, Rick. I know you've probably made a full career out of talking about 3, 2, 1, and that's not a Veeam specific thing. That's an industry specific concept, meaning 3 copies of your data, ideally 2 different kinds of media, ideally 1 or more of which is off-site, and that has served really very well as best practice for quite some time. The challenge has been, if I loop back to the very beginning, Jason, we were hitting the expanding threatscape that horizontally we've got more and more issues taking place, more and more potential points of attack. So we've actually recommended as best practice, if we go to a slide in our current cyber and ransomware recommendations, we now recommend 3, 2, 1, 1, 0. So the first 3 digits are the same, 3 or more copies of your data, 2 different types of media. At home, I use SSD and I use HDD, and I've got a security bank deposit box a mile away from me. So, this applies to a small scale as well as to a Fortune 500 company. But Jason and Rick, we've recently introduced earlier this year the next one, which is an offline or air-gapped, some kind of hardened copy of that data such that it couldn't be compromised even by an internal mechanism. And then something that's new maybe in terms of us really trying to mention it, but not new in the product, Rick, in terms of being able to leverage something that we call sure backup to ensure there are no errors. Because Jason, we've been in the industry each 31 years. The bad joke in backup is it's really hard to recover something that hasn't been backed up properly. We can't manufacture the zeros and ones. So, verifying at the point that you capture the data, and of course, having offline resilient copies of that data are vital. Now, I do see we've got a similar kind of question coming in. We've had a couple people ask about different kinds of backup migration. We had that earlier, I think even from the same fella, but we talked about it in the past, and the tool that he mentions back, I don't know, I'm showing my age, but probably 5-6 years ago, maybe 7-8 years ago, that particular vendor had something they called external data connector, where they didn't really import the data, they imported portions of the job to allow a backup solution to be able to get up and running faster. There are things like Index Engines, StoneRAM, a few others that actually now IBM bought, acquired, and sunsetted Butterfly Software to be able to do something similar across those lines. So, having now probably looked at that interesting notion of importing backup now for about quarter of a century, there's good and bad with doing that. Generally, the reason most vendors really don't do much with that is because of what we just mentioned on that last zero or digit, that no other vendor likes to take the sort of liability that goes along with perhaps a backup being written by another solution where there were actually errors on the actual backup format. Which brings us back to 32110. And Rick and Jason, I think by next year we're going to easily come out with maybe a 6th to 10th digit if we really put our heads together.
It's
but
a
the
phone
notion,
number soon.
it's a phone number. Right now we're a zip code if you're in the United States, Canada. We'll get it to a phone number. But Rick, maybe riff a little bit on the one, meaning you've got a talk track around ultra resilient infrastructure.
Yeah, it's really simple, Dave. When I talk to organizations who don't come out of ransomware successfully, they don't have the one. It's that simple. Meaning some organizations will beat ransomware or recover with what I call a base 321 rule. But Central Florida represents with this zip code here. The one that is offline, immutable, or air-gapped, I give that the phrase ultra resilient. If you have one or more copies, and don't be afraid to be two copies ultra resilient nowadays, that is the criteria where you are basically preparing to deal with the ransomware threat. Now, I see organizations who get through it without, but that's luck. And the threatscape is incredibly advanced and changing, and you don't want to have luck in your plan. So I highly recommend you check out some of the resources we have around the 32110 rule. And the short story is, Dave, that this is a mindset that doesn't require any specific set of technology, yet it can remediate almost any type of failure scenario, including ransomware.
I think it's ironic that the zip code for 32110 Brunel, Florida, this is a zip code that actually chronologically is likely to get a hurricane every other year. And yet, so as a poster child for disaster recovery, they are the zip code that emphasizes what good data protection should be at. Surely we should do something about that later. Hey, one last shout to the map before we say no, before we do our discards afterwards. I see Saudi Arabia in the house, Florida. Hey, if Floridian, if you are in or have ever been in Brunel, Florida, along the way, please chime in on that. Maybe we should do our next team meeting down there. That'd be fun. Portland's in the house. France, Wisconsin. I spent a good amount of time there. Arizona, St. Petersburg, Russia, Pakistan. All right. I think we have more of the map green than not, which of course is actually our greater global goal here at Veeam anyway. So thank you for that along the way. Hey, we don't really have time to kind of dig into it, but Rick, next time that you're doing a cyber strategy, one of the things that kind of strikes me that's different than anything else we talk about in data protection, typically in data protection, you're always thinking about that most recent copy of the data, right? How do I get back to most recent? We built a decade-long project around availability. Most recent copy of your data is probably exactly not the version you want for cyber. So if I had an extra 20 minutes, that would probably be the thing I would want to dig into your beautiful bald brain and try to understand more on. But we don't. So, okay, we got 1 minute left. Let me just make a quick pitch for next Monday. We're going to turn the gears a little bit different. We got a couple guests coming on. We're going to talk about data protection in the public sector. So whereas we typically think about business continuity, disaster recovery, they think of continuity of operations. Where we think about lost revenue, they think about ensuring service delivery, whether it's for soldiers or taxpayers or patients, but it's all of the non-profit outcomes of ensuring access to data. So that'll be fun for same 167 hours from now.
Awesome. And speaking of shout out, do want to give a quick update on the short URL we have for a great ransomware, cyber, and backup resource, actually authored by our brainiac Rick Vanover in there. It continues to be one of the most downloaded white papers we've had, really probably in Veeam's history. So shout out to that. Shout out or look ahead to Jason in the public sector coming this Monday. With that, thank you so much, Rick, for joining. On behalf of Jason and myself, Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Stay safe, stay positive, and we'll see you on the next live stream. Thank you.
Bye.